accidentally stabbed my.
Yes.
We saw a problem because there are engines out there like Unity and Unreal, which take up 90% of the market. We're not competing with Unity or Unreal. We're not competing with PlayStation 5.
What is the advantage here?
Our engine is very small, so everybody be able to run this.
The ability to be able to walk down the street and see all content generated automatically.
I wouldn't say it's GTA 6 yet.
It's like the John Wick of engineering.
Actually, our team is 50% female.
Oh, these people are like animals. You can't shoot them down, and that's why the invention of the new bullet came in.
Technology we're building is already revolutionary enough, even without the AI bit.
Why is that?
Caravan is essentially a podcast that's focused on Muslim entrepreneurs, builders, and creators. But more than that, of course, we have our Muslim identity. But what we really want to discover is how faith really leans into our decision making, and sometimes the challenges that it brings in the Western spaces, right? Whether it be loans, whether it be what else?
Like certain rooms you can't go into, certain feelings, projections of feelings that you have, how it feels when 7 people around you are drinking alcohol and you're not the only one. So those are the types of conversations that at least I've had with some of my friends, and I know Naveed has probably had with his. So we were like, hey, how do we make this into a more formal conversation that's actually visible in public? Because we kind of have a network of people where I can just call up and be like, hey, how do you approach this? How do you approach that? And we were kind of like, hey, how do we make that visible? And so that's kind of the intention of this podcast. It's one, to say that, hey, we do have successful Muslim entrepreneurs and people that are builders and innovators and moving the needle forward. So that's number one. It's hey, it's possible to do it. And here's the people that are doing it. And here's the lessons you can learn from them. Then depending on the stage that you're at, right? And then the second is really to inspire the next generation of Muslim talent, right? So I think that's kind of the double, that's kind of the two goal thing that I always kind of point to. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, that pretty much highlights it, and really just focusing on that, right? That the transition that one goes through of what seems as not possible, the impossible becoming possible, right? And still holding on to your values. Yeah. But that's pretty much covers all of it. But how about you do this introduction for this one?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe what we can do is talk a little bit about what you're doing, and what you're up to and what stage you're at first, and then we can maybe go into the very basics of your very start of your journey, let's say.
All right, cool, yeah. So right now we're building something called Libi Engine, and that's a game engine which is browser based. So we looked at the whole industry. So my background, I studied computer science. I've been a gamer through my life.
I'm a big gamer. I've gamed so much that I've probably run too many seizures. So I'm not endorsing that. I'm guessing, are you a PC gamer or a console gamer or just all of it?
Pretty much just a PC gamer.
Okay.
Master race. I grew up with PC games as a kid.
Yeah.
I used to tinker a lot and make changes because our PC wasn't good enough for games. So I remember one time when I was around 9-10 years old, I was basically editing my brother's computer, his PC, which at that time was quite expensive. It's £2,000.
Wow. How long ago was this?
This is 15, 20 years back.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually more, yeah. It's probably 20, 25 years ago.
Wow. And how old were you then when you were doing that?
I was about 10.
So it's an early tinkerer.
Yeah, I was early tinkerer.
Yeah.
So just editing files just to make something work. And then changing things around. But I ended up studying computer science and going into that. I really want to go back to
Libi, yes.
Still go back Libi.
Yeah.
So Libi Engine is a browser-based game engine. So far there hasn't been anything on the browser. There's technologies which are JavaScript-based, where you can code it all up. But it's a higher layer, and then it feeds into something called WebGL. Which helps render things on the screen in your browser. But it's not an engine, it's more about how things look. So if you wanted a 3D sneaker, or you wanted a little 3D room, then WebGL is what you'd use to do it. So e-commerce websites, maybe Nike or wherever, they'd put that up. Of course, I'm boycotting Nike. But, imagine you'd have all these different, things out there, but they weren't immersive. They weren't allowing you to add interactivity or make a complete, really sophisticated game. So we were okay, and we saw it We saw a problem because there are engines out there like Unity and Unreal, which take up 90% of the market. And when people try to build using those, they can't really export. Well, they can export to the web, but it's not very. It doesn't really work on the browser. You know, it's massive load times, or it just doesn't work because it's, you know, it just breaks the browser, breaks the technologies for getting that to run.
So for the purposes of our audience, they may not be familiar with Unity and kind of like platforms. So maybe you talk a little bit about like that in comparison to like what you're doing, and a little bit like, I know you just talked about exports, like some export capabilities and functionalities that you have, but just kind of pretend like someone doesn't know something about the infrastructure gaming layers for like developers, right?
So the technical bar, or, you know, the accessibility for building a 3D game or any 3D experience is really high. So the software, like there's something called Unity, there's something called Unreal. It might take you over a year to get somewhat good at it. And then even then, you know, you probably should know how to code. So building out any sort of 3D experience is going to take you quite a lot of time, quite a lot of work as well. And you need a whole bunch of people around you to build that out. And, you know, I can code, but I was never really in love with either Unity or Unreal. I just hate having to spend a lot of time trying to learn new tools and then be fed up with them. And then I saw that there were like problems with getting things to run on the browser. Like I wanted something that could be easily shareable and editable in real time. So that's where this kind of idea kind of popped up in my mind, where what if we had an engine that could work right in the browser? You make your changes in real time. You could even collaborate with other people. And what kind of technology would be needed to get that to work, to get that to happen? And the big challenge was, okay, this needs to be built from scratch. And I had somebody on my team already, a friend of mine who I'd worked with in the past, and he had a background in Unity. But yeah, even for him, it was a big challenge. And then I started to look around, and I eventually met my co-founder from a blog post. So basically what we built out is called Libi Engine, and it's browser-based, very easy to access and build with. You just drag and drop, which is really different to something like Unity or Unreal, where, like I mentioned, it's a massive undertaking to build anything. So we want to democratize 3D. We want to make it as easy as possible for anyone, even like my aunt, to be able to create content. Mashallah, my aunt is very smart, but I'm just talking like, I want anybody to become a creator. Just like, you know, YouTube opened up the gates to people becoming video creators, becoming creators in content.
Kind of like going from like an Adobe user to someone now using Canva
or
on the web,
Figma,
right? Okay. So what is I think the idea of being able to like work collaboratively is really big, at least in this space. Because at least I know when I was in college and a few friends who were game developers, I mean, the work and attention that they needed just to learn the skill set to use Unity or Unreal was like very difficult. What is the advantage here? Does it, you know, is the goal to essentially function as well as that? Or is it more so, you know, like for example, Canva is great, right? But Adobe, you can get really nitty gritty and get what you want, but the learning curve is a lot larger. Is that kind of a similar analogy, or like what is the intention?
That's part of it. I think the vision also was where technology is leading in the next 5-10 years time. We saw that, you know, Meta obviously, or Facebook, they pivoted right to the metaverse, and they bought Oculus, and they wanted to go into VR. I think it's going to take time. Just like AI had a lot of promise, and it took a long time for AI to kind of really pan out. I do believe that things like VR and AR are going to come back with a vengeance, because we're going to have a lot more new hardware like smart glasses. So so that's the hardware side. So I was thinking, what about the software side? How are people going to, you're walking down the street and you see like a sign to tell you where your closest mosque is, for example, or the history of a place. Even here in London, you have some places that have history to do with Muslims. You could have something saying, hey, this is where William, what's his name?
Shakespeare.
Not Shakespeare.
Kirk.
The one of the first Muslims here in the UK. I should know the name. But yeah, we had like an early Muslim here. And they built William Quilliam. So Quilliam Not William, I think it's Quilliam.
Quilliam. I was like, William
So
Quilliam.
you have something called the Quilliam Foundation, and you
Okay.
have like Quilliam. Basically, he's like one of the early Muslims, and he built a mosque here. But people might walk down the road and they might not know, hey, there was a Muslim. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, you have these smart glasses. You need to have things happening dynamically, and you could jump into like a scene, and you need to have millions of assets loading. With traditional technology, that doesn't happen because with Unity or Unreal, when you have a game or any 3D experience, it's all self-contained. So all of the assets have to be downloaded. Imagine you go on, you find something on the Play Store or on your, the iPhone store, and you download, or from the App Store, you download that app. Everything has to be inside that app. You can't just have things loading in real time. So that's where our engine comes into play. It dynamically streams all the stuff while you're exploring. So the time it takes for people to get into something is a lot shorter. So when you think about YouTube or TikTok, people consume that content. But imagine if they had to download the entire video. You're waiting there for 2-3 minutes, maybe longer. I remember back in the day, I used to do like torrents. And it used to take like a long time to download a whole movie. Now, the same could be said with gaming or with any 3D experience. With the web, you can have something download and stream, and that's where our technology comes into play for 3D. So imagine where to the web what video streaming was or audio streaming was. So you have Spotify, which makes it so simple for people to listen to music. We have YouTube or TikTok, which allows people to consume video content. And with Libi Engine, you can consume 3D content just as easily without having to wait a long time for downloads.
So this really reminds me of when Google did the whole gaming streaming platform. Pardon me. I remember getting it, right, and I liked it, but at the same time, I was like, well, I'm still going to play my PlayStation 5 or on my PC because the graphics are way better, right? So I will invest the time to wait till the download's complete so I can enjoy it, right? Is that going to be a challenge with Libby? Because sounds like potentially it would be because you're streaming the content, right?
So we're streaming the actual 3D asset.
Okay.
So for example, we're not doing pixel streaming. So pixel streaming is a way some people do stuff, which is basically a video, and on the server you have the game engine. So our game engine actually sits on your device, and it allows you to do stuff in real time. So the graphics levels are pretty high compared to other things that you might see on the web. So we can push that bar for the level of detail really high, but we're not challenging your device. Let's say we're not making it impossible for you to experience these things because your device isn't the latest device. So if you have like an old device, we can push the settings down automatically, based on your internet connection, based on how powerful your device is or what device you use. We can change that. And that allows for accessibility. So it's a little bit of a different thing. If you want a AAA standard game, we're not competing with Unity or Unreal. We're not competing with PlayStation 5. We're finding a new
vertical,
which is to do with these experiences that you can jump into and jump out of really quickly. And we've seen a lot of creators coming on board on things like Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox. And we're kind of fitting into that vertical of user-generated content. And users themselves becoming immersed into these experiences and building their own out of it. So it's almost like, I wouldn't say we're inventing a new genre, but there's a new genre that's becoming apparent right now. And we're seizing the opportunity to jump into that and build something out based on our expertise and based on the technologies that we believe are going to be the future of it.
So I feel like this would be really great for indie gamers or indie gaming development.
For sure, yeah.
Right. So, because I feel like, at least on Steam, I buy a lot of indie games and I really enjoy playing them, but they're not on the same graphic level per se as Far Cry or Assassin's Creed, but they still have really good storytelling and really fun way to engage. And God, do you play Overcooked? Have you played Overcooked?
I haven't, no.
It starts a lot of fights, so
Yeah.
I'll say that. But
Is that the game where you're like
you're like running a restaurant,
running a kitchen or something?
Ah,
Oh,
okay.
okay,
and you,
interesting.
you have to like one person to go like cut the onions.
Of course,
and
you
then-
would love that game.
Yeah. And but yeah, I mean that game's like it's not like the a showstopper with
Right.
graphics, but super fun, right? So I can see this playing like a huge role into that. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah. I mean, my mind's kind of like flaring in a lot of directions,
Yeah.
right? Like I think so I think I understand a little bit more now in terms of what this concept or product is trying to solve. And to me, it's like, VR, the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality, to me, there's still a difference, a significant difference, right? And to me, where this really sits in is kind of in the AR side a little bit more, especially in the early days. Maybe eventually you can build like an enclosed system and, like a full stop kind of place. But like the ability to be able to walk down the street and see all content generated automatically, that I think that there'll be a time when that comes. It's just a matter of timing. And then you also talked about like the ability to kind of replicate some of these like very successful like games that are targeting towards the younger generation, right? Like Roblox and basically going in and having in-game building. And so I was like checking out your couple of those prototypes this morning, and I was like, oh, this is like really interesting. So you can literally like walk through. And so no, it's very, very like I think I'm kind of sold on, hey, this is a potential problem. This is definitely like an infrastructure solution. Like to me, is that accurate? Would you say that?
Yeah.
Because you're really like
I'd say we're like the full stack. So with the infrastructure, we have the editor, and it's all modular, so you can actually make your own, interface to it as well. But one of the other things that we saw was, everybody was jumping onto this metaverse bandwagon, let's say back in the day, especially with Meta. And you mentioned also augmented reality. It's just a matter of time with the smart glasses. A lot of the, you have, for example, Snap, they've created their glasses. Meta is also looking at, smart glasses as well. I think they bought Ray-Ban, right?
Yeah.
And then you have some other companies out there that are also really pushing the boundaries of making these lighter and easier to wear, making everything user-friendly as possible. The question then is like, do we want to live, because that's going to immerse people a lot.
Yeah.
There's good to it and bad to it. Like we're already stuck behind the black mirror, which is our smartphones, right? Now imagine you stuck this, the smart glasses, and you're walking around everywhere with it. Do you want that software to be controlled by a company like Facebook Meta or Microsoft or Google, or do you want it to be open? So our goal also is to open our software, eventually be open source. It'll be something that is run by the people as well on their own. They can run a node.
Yeah.
So we want to democratize not just the creation, but the actual run of the entire ecosystem. Because it basically, anything that runs AR on the web, it should be a fabric of the web itself. So that's like our vision as well, is like,
that's interesting.
we want to make sure that this is for the people too.
No, that's interesting. How would you do that though?
That's going to be like
That's
jumping down the Web3 rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But you probably heard of something called DePIN, which is
Yeah.
decentralized physical infrastructure. So our engine is very small, and we made it from the get-go that eventually it can be distributed, so everybody be able to run this on their spare capacity, whether you have like extra space on your computer to have storage, which other people could use in an encrypted way. Maybe you have like graphics card that can have a GPU that can run certain stuff. So every part of the graphics engine or the game engine that runs Libi, that will run the AR and the VR or whatever you want to do, is going to be distributed across people's devices, maybe even on servers, whatever it is, and everything kind of collaborates in doing that in real time.
This really reminds me of and
you get rewarded for it.
Yeah, like torrenting, right? Like back in the day,
yeah.
like I remember like, oh, does this have enough seeds? So like, okay, cool, it does. And or even with have you ever watched the TV show Silicon Valley? Right, with the device that they make, what they make with, what's it called, Peter Pan?
Yeah,
I think, right. So it kind of reminds me of that. That's kind of really awesome that you're kind of distributing the network of how it's being functionally used.
That's a very tough challenge. But okay, so
it's like we have it at the back
a-
of our mind, but we're
Yeah,
not saying,
exactly.
hey, we're going to build it now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
So there's
right.
lots of things that we have on our
Possible
roadmap.
solutions.
And then we have that. So my team, alhamdulillah, the CTO, she's amazing. She's like what you'd call a 100x developer. She's like very, very smart. She's like, okay, this is what we're gonna have. The way we're architecturing the entire thing will allow us to do that in the future. But and from my side, is the business side. It's like, okay, we don't want to be spending a lot of time doing these sort of things when we need to be getting that traction. We need to go into market. So that's kind of also like. So you mentioned VR.
Yeah.
So VR hasn't. It's still something that has to find product market fit. It has to find that audience where everybody jumps in. There are people who do VR on Oculus or other devices, but it's still not mainstream. It's still something
100%.
that people don't find. Whereas augmented reality is something that people, basically that's the gateway into things like VR eventually. But we do need more content. We need people to create more things, and waiting on studios or professionals to come and build that content might not be the way that happens. Just like with YouTube, I think when they first started, the founders wanted it to be, I think actually they wanted it to be a dating site, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
Did
think
they?
it was.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
It
it
was
was.
dating, but
Yeah,
with video.
you would like upload your video of like
Yeah.
your own bio and such.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then-
Wow. Like a bio.
Yeah.
And then I think they just had this eureka moment, like, let's just open it up for anybody to upload a video.
Right.
And then there's people started to upload all sorts of videos, and it went off, which was not what I think their advisors or the VCs were like, that's not going to be the right way to do it. You need to be really
Narrow.
Focused,
niche,
yeah.
which is a good idea as well. But
Yeah.
sometimes
Well, it depends if you're an infrastructure product or
Yeah.
not, right? Like if you're an infrastructure product, you just kind of can open the gates to see
Yeah.
what really sticks. And for them, a lot of things stuck, and so that makes sense. But we're talking a lot about like your future roadmap and a lot of these things that I come from like the decentralized concepts of I understand that philosophy a lot, and those are very tough challenges. And so like let's maybe like narrow this conversation into like what is it so we're sold on like what the potential problem is and the long-term value of the industry vertical, but what's your thought process of how you narrowed like to just being PC and just being web-based, and how did you kind of focus on like what you're really focused on for the next maybe let's say 12 to 24 months, right?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like your chapter 2, 3, 4 of like this what we just talked
Yeah.
about, which is really like the chapter 10 to 20, right?
So the early web, anybody could create websites and create stuff. You had some, and now we have like Canva, for example. You have places to come and create web. You had something called Flash. I'm not sure if you guys remember.
I used-
Flash apps.
Dude, that's
Yeah.
so crazy you say that. You know,
So yeah,
I remember Flash so much. So like I used to like do a lot of web development stuff
Uh-huh.
with my father. I was free slave labor pretty much. Child labor, I should say. I played with Dreamweaver, Flash,
Exactly.
like all this old stuff. So
when I was in high school as well, it's like I came across Dreamweaver. I didn't know how to code. It's like I was as a kid basically. And I remember in Dreamweaver, you could just move the layers and then you can convert it into tables, and you've got a website, even without having to know how to code. So you can just position things and publish things really easily. And I made some websites like that. And I remember I was using like free hosting. So it's just experimenting. And then Flash allowed you also to move things around on the screen. You could create artwork really easily. You could create animations, and it was just so like mind blowing. As a person, like my nature is also creative. Like I love drawing. I love creating things, art. I'd say that's more of me than the technical side. And I was like, there's this gap because obviously Apple, I mean, they had the right reasons to go all gun ho and say Flash sucks, so we're not going to adopt it onto the iPhone, because they weren't. I think I don't remember which company was looking after. Was it Adobe at the end? They weren't really updating it with regards to viruses and potential
Risk factors.
with malware and stuff. So basically, Apple killed it. It didn't work on your browser, and then they didn't update as well. So Flash went away. I think Microsoft did something called Silverlight, which also didn't gain traction. Then we ended up with HTML5. which was also quite technical. But there was this whole feeling of creativity which I felt got lost. And I think with 3D and having these kind of easy to use tools, that could come back on the web. So the traditional engines and traditional technology that we have right now doesn't allow for the normal average person to come and build out some creative storytelling. So going back to something you mentioned, or this word storytelling, I really believe that 3D and creating animations, creating things on the fly has a massive opportunity with regards to interactivity and storytelling. So one of the things that we're doing right now is right now on the website, you can just go there, you log in, you can use a template, and you can just drag and drop from that template. So you can remix something that's already made, and you can build out your own version of it. We have the ability to put camera anchors around an experience, and then you can put whatever you need in front of that camera. You could put like a character, you could put audio, you can have like some sort of artifact, or whether it's a 3D model, whether it's a painting, and then you can just script it really easily without coding. And when the person presses play, they can go from one thing to the other, and it can give them an entire story. It can give them an educational story about, let's say, the history of Palestine, or the history of or a walkthrough of a museum, for example, or a showroom for e-commerce. So there's so much that can be done really easily. So that's kind of the direction or the fit we're doing. And then making it accessible. So once you publish, you got a link, and you just share that link on social media. You can embed it on a website. So it's very easy to disseminate and share. Whereas with the traditional engine, you have to go and download that piece of software. So it's added friction. So we're just reducing that friction completely with our engine. So that's kind of fit that we're doing right now.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What kind of drove you to, like, what was your thought process to making the decision that, hey, I'm going to focus on this specific area or this specific approach that we just discussed?
I think a lot of it was like, I wanted this myself. Like I've been doing blogs in the past. I've been creating content, whether it's video. It's been a while, but I used to make like videos, like little documentaries as well, on things like the war in Lebanon, just like collaging together video content and creating stories. I also used Flash, like I mentioned in the past. I was like missing that sort of interactivity and creativity. And then, playing computer games, modding them. So all of that came together, and I was like, wow, imagine I had something like Figma. I could make something in 3D, and I could just like publish it. What do I need to get there? And then that's when I started to look for my team, look for people who I can work with that can get this to happen. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. And I mean, I'm not as versed I'm now only getting into like the creative side of the world, let's say, with some editing and so softwares and different things, and like the pace of innovation, like with some of these AI tools, is like insane, right? Like just what you were able to do 2 years ago to now is like, forget that, 12 months ago to now is like insane. Like the productivity, the auto captures and all these things. So it's like interesting. So you like mentioned like the ability to like capture assets and then basically turn them into like this immersive experience. So do you have like thoughts of like how you'd integrate with other like tools that make those assets, or because you have this desire to be open source, like it's just going to be something that's just available? Like maybe talk a little bit about that in context to open source. And I want to bring back a point that you mentioned earlier, specifically about Facebook and how they've actually come out and correct me if I'm wrong, but they've come out and they said, hey, we have a desire to be open source. So talk a little bit about their psychology on that in context to this industry. And like, do you think that that's a net good, net bad? Like, how does that play? Do you think they have like different alternatives in terms of why they're saying they want to be open source? A little bit about that, if that makes sense.
I believe open source in any regard is a good thing. Obviously, you want to know what's behind the hood, and other people can experiment with it. I don't know too much about the rationale behind it, so I wouldn't really be able to answer why Facebook or Meta is doing that. But from our perspective, going back to your initial question, or answering that, you can use software like Blender. There's other software for creating 3D assets or creating 3D objects, let's say, and then you can export those as various file types, and then you just bring them into our engine, and it automatically optimizes them, and you can use them within any sort of game or experience you want to build. You could also export from our software and try to use it in another software. So that's something we could do in the future. Right now you can't, but there's nothing to stop people from building things in, making very easy for people to build and then export it out. So we just want to be very flexible with regards to how people build and how people share stuff. Within our engine as well, we're going to make it very easy for people to build assets themselves. When I say an asset, I'm talking about a 3D model. So for example, the chair I'm sitting on, a table, a car, individual parts of a car as well, like wheels and things. So the cool thing about our engine is you can add logic to each of those assets. So let's say you design, you love wheels, or you love the trims on the wheel. So you make that, you design that. That could be your expertise. And then you label that as a wheel. And then somebody else can then just say, hey, I really love, Hamza's wheels. This guy's the best at making and designing wheels. And then they put that into their own car. But because the logic is already integrated or tagged onto that, a person who's building the chassis can then add that in there, and then they've got their car with the wheels, and it functions as actual wheels. So that's kind of the angle we're going at, making it very easy for people to build all sorts of experiences. I wouldn't say it's GTA 6 yet, but like our viewpoint is eventually we can get to that level of sophistication and openness. So you can build out these massive worlds. You can build out things that people in the past used to call the metaverse. And another part of like why we were doing it is myself and my co-founder Erica, we're massive sci-fi fans. Like, we love things like Star Trek. We love things like The Matrix, Ready Player One. All of these things were like mind-blowing to us, and we're like, what do we need to create that sort of environment? What sort of technology is going to be needed for that? And it had to be on the web. It's like the 3D web, and then this is the technology that we're building out for that.
This is things are coming to my mind. Have you ever played Gary's mod?
I have, yeah.
This reminds me of like obviously like in Minecraft as well. People can make things or templates that people can then go and collect and get right from like another creator. This seems like, I don't want to say like grown up. When I say grown up, it's like applicable usage, right? It's not just isolated to Minecraft or isolated to Gary's mod. This is like really cool because you're essentially allowing anyone to create and share, but also be something functional beyond just a game. And I think that is something I'm like, wow, I don't know how to piece it together. But like, it's one of the same things that I kind of experienced when I started playing World of Warcraft like years ago, like in 2004, where like, WoW to me was like one of the original social networks, right? And then came Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's almost really incredible because so much of gaming that we do and so much of even gaming culture eventually gets to the real world, right? And this seems to be almost like another iteration of like, millions of people play Minecraft, millions of people play Gary's mod, people are doing these things, people like making, and they're doing it all for free, right? And now you're essentially making a tool that allows them like, hey, you can actually use that similar skill set, build things, create things, share things, and you might be able to make a living out of it, right? Which is really incredible.
And there's also like a transition happening. So every generation hangs out in different places. Like you mentioned, like Facebook. I don't really use Facebook anymore. And I found that I was an early user of Instagram. The early days of Instagram and how Instagram today, it's
Worlds
changed so
apart.
much. Like everybody, like if you want to connect with somebody, some people will just give you their Instagram so you can chat on there. Now, Gen A are spending a lot of time socializing in places like Roblox, Fortnite. Like 40% of Gen A, I think it's around 40% or more, are spending their time just hanging out with their friends, not even playing a game. They just be hanging out and chatting in these sort of environments.
And it's kind of funny because to me, back in the day at least, I grew up in a small town in East Texas, and so my global perspective was very limited, close to none. So I would meet people online on WoW, and I would, did you ever play World of Warcraft by chance?
I have, yeah.
Okay, were you in Alliance or Horde?
Alliance.
Alliance, yeah, you gave Alliance vibes. So a lot of the hangouts would be like in front of the mailbox. I guess for Alliance would be like Ironforge, or for Horde would be at Orgrimmar. And I would say probably like 2 to 3 hours. I'm just pressing space bars, just jumping on the mailbox, but I'm socializing there with other people. But I think, even in Roblox, they have like protests there for Palestine. Like,
Yes.
people are doing whole like actual events of advocacy
I had no idea
on
about
these
that.
spaces.
They even like have like, I think they had like a Makkah or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they like
yeah. The
Tawaf.
and everything. Yeah, and I think more recently they did one of like a protest, because the LA protests that are happening. So it's kind of interesting how they're able to stay involved, like this younger generation, when they're not able to do so, in the real world, right?
Yeah. I have an interesting story. So during COVID, we bought these PSVRs. So I was like,
Yeah.
I always try to like just try out different things. So I've tried Oculus. I've tried
Vive.
I've also tried. So basically, a couple of my friends, were like, hey, like we're just gonna play some games. It's like COVID, and that was like my revival of some gaming. But anyways, like we're basically doing PSVR, and in it, it's like has a lot of the social components. So literally, like this is a time when you can't go to the masjid. We literally like did a VR Jummah.
That's awesome.
like jokes aside, we're literally just like let someone. Like I mean, it was kind of a joke a little bit,
Yeah.
right? But it was just like interesting, and I think I at my age probably think it's a little bit of a joke, but that's the reality for like a lot of people. And like I did not know like in terms of like the acceptance of being able to do that, right? Not that you should have your Jummah on VR. You should definitely go to the masjid. But in general, like having like a protest. This is the first time I'm hearing about having a protest on Roblox. Like that's a way to like at least like get the message out in some forms, and it's like grassroots. So it's very interesting to hear that. So I'm gonna go back a little bit to like, okay, like we've talked a lot about like your vision, the roadmap. We've talked a little bit of how you've approached a little, some of the decisions you've made into why you were focused into open source and things like that. What about your go-to-market strategy? Where are you with that stage, right? And then I don't know if you're at liberty to discuss some of your funding related to that, right? Like what stage are you in terms of like that go-to-market strategy, and what's kind of your approach to prove that validation?
Yeah.
And then how does that relate to like the the investing side, raising capital side?
I mean, it's been a massive challenge to build, it's been a deep tech project. So deep tech obviously is a challenge to get funding. Alhamdulillah, we were super driven and motivated to build. So the last 3 years, we've been building all this tech out, and now we're going to market. So what we're doing is we're approaching indie studios, individual developers, specifically those who want to build for the web. So we're not saying, hey, get rid of Unity or Unreal, build using us. We're saying if you need something that's going to work on a website, it's a lot easier to use our technology than the existing technologies that are out there, because you want it to work even on your mobile, on somebody's like iOS or on Chrome, for example. And that's where, that's basically our value proposition for the customer is like, hey, you can use this. Right now it's free to use. And we just started off like at marketing. We started off like, doing the sales. In hindsight, that should have been something, we did a lot earlier. Because, my background's in tech. I worked as a product manager as well. And also my co-founder, she's like also computer science tech. And I think like one of my kind of, I wouldn't say recommendation, it is a recommendation. It's like when you get started, just keep in mind that as amazing your technology is going to be, the business side is also just as important. Mm-hmm. So going to market is something we're working on right now. We've got good feedback from existing developers. They love how easy it is to build. So they can already see that the time it takes to get used to our software is a lot shorter than it is for something like brand new software like Unity or Unreal. So getting them onboarded is the next challenge. Finding these people. So basically, we're honing in onto that ideal customer profile that we have in mind, which is indie developers, marketing agencies as well that want to create you know interesting experiences for their clients or for brands, for example. So that's kind of the approach that we have. So even with like marketing agencies that might outsource that to existing studios, then those studios might go back to them and say, hey, your concept is great, but it's not something that's going to work on somebody's browser because of this and this issue. But we can come in and say, hey, actually it's easy to build. We solve a lot of the technical issues because we have this kind of streaming of the assets. People don't have these long load times. They're not going to get bored waiting for your concept. And you can also monetize it with collectibles, or you can monetize it in these different ways. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm gonna maybe pivot a lot because we've talked a lot about the business, but we haven't talked about the journey to get you to where you are today. So what kind of brought you like to this concept and this idea? And you've talked a lot about like Dreamweaver. You've talked about, Flash, not Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver is my.
I think I mentioned that.
Yeah,
as
you
well.
mentioned the layers and stuff.
Both of them.
Yeah, but I think Flash I understand Flash because it's very creative, and I messed around with Flash. You could do like these awesome things and like these amazing animations, and it was just like you just place them on like buckets on stuff. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little tangent, but so in terms of like what kind of really brought you to meet your co-founder? Like how did you like say, hey, this is really an idea that's worth pursuing and testing? Like
how did you assemble your Avengers essentially?
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe talk through that a little bit, right?
So yeah, my background's in computer science. I've always been like tinkering around with games and building and modding and skinning things. So like whether that was in Counter-Strike or Half-Life. You mentioned also Gary's mod. So that's kind of inspiring. And then I mentioned like the sci-fi side of me. And I was like, okay, I really want to build something in this space. It was kind of new to me. I did do computer graphics, and I made in my final year of university, I made like a Homer Simpson simulation in C, which is all coded. It was a lot of hard work, but it had me inspired to be creative, using 3D. So I was always into that. And then I worked with my first co-founder. He's not with us anymore, but that's a different story. I won't go into that. We're still friends.
Okay, so I was like,
but yeah, I mean, mashallah, he's a great guy. He's from France. He's Moroccan. Okay. We worked on another project before, so we were co-founders in Web3. And he had expertise in Unity, but very quickly find out that the ideas that we had weren't matching with what Unity could do. It's like we really need to go all the way down to the nitty-gritty, low-level stuff and build this out from scratch. I guess that might have scared him away. But yeah, I was on a blog on LinkedIn, and I saw it was all about computer graphics. It was to do with the browser. And one of the comments was written by this lady called Erica Simon, and she was based in France, but she had all the same ideas that I had and the same sort of vision. And also, I could tell from her blogs as well that she's writing, that she had that passion for it. And I contacted her through LinkedIn. I said, hey, this is what we're building. We've got this side of stuff already sorted out. But this undertaking can't just be done by one person. We need to be, maybe even working together. And then we hopped on a couple of calls. The first call, she's very French, so she was very, and she admits to it. It's part of her personality. She can be very skeptical, and she was like, throwing a lot of tough questions to me. It's like, why did you even consider Web3? Bitcoin's a scam. Because I was going on that approach, like, we need to build this, and we need to build it on top of Web3 tech. And she that was new to her. But eventually by our second call, alhamdulillah, she was like, yeah, we have very similar views on stuff. We also have very similar values as well as like, how we want this company to be, how we want to treat the people who work with us, the type of software we're building, and how it will be open source and how it will be distributed. So we were very aligned on all these things. And yeah, we just started to work together. It's been very easy, and we've been working together for over 3 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, it's like I want to ask you this question, and I don't know how controversial it is, but like the gaming community has a rap for like, or it has a reputation, I should say, for being like very like misogynistic and very like aggressive, and it's not everyone, right? Of course, but there's definitely like pockets of this, right? So like, is that something that you've seen being involved in that community? Like, was that like a conscious conversations that you were just referring to with your co-founder? Like, I don't know if that plays a role in any of this.
Alhamdulillah, no, haven't really seen that. A lot of the creators I've met are actually female as well. So last year, I was part of a cohort that was chosen out of a lot of different startups here in London. Or actually based in the entire UK. We're part of the London Mayor's Game Changers initiative, which is basically people in the creative industry within gaming, and then giving them some funding to go to Finland and to actually kind of, get mentoring and so forth. And a lot of the people who were in that space were female. I think there has been that misogynistic kind of vibe from the old school kind of game studios that have been around for like 20 odd years or more, because the early engineering in general has been like male dominated, but I think a lot of those walls are being broken down, and I think awareness also has stopped people from being these kind of sexist a-holes, or astaghfirullah for my language, but all these kind of really mean people. I think what a person might still have that in maybe through microaggressions or micro behaviors, but being out and out sexist, I think has also been reduced quite a bit. But I think as a founder, you do have to also be aware. So as a male founder, even if you're a Muslim and you're from a minority, it's like a different kind of spectrum. You need to be aware of the females in your team, how other people react and behave with them, and whether they're also confident in speaking out. And within a Muslim community, I think sometimes there's this kind of toxic feeling. There is toxicity within Muslim men as well, where it's a very complex topic, because we have radical femininity and things that can go against Muslim values. But the thing is, like, most Muslims, they don't really understand Muslim values in the first place. There's so much to do with like misconceptions, how people are brought up from various cultures, and then balancing out, Western liberal feminism, and then the feminism that is actually inherent within Islam. Because, Islam gives Muslim women rights. They can work, they can be independent, their money is their money. All of these concepts, we shouldn't be limiting women in what they're able to do. There's so much out there. And then you have guys who, for whatever reason, they push back on things. And then even the word feminism,
It's triggering.
triggers them, right? But I think, we need to be aware of these things and find that, Islam gives us this framework. And then whatever fits within that framework, we need to accept and we need to adopt, even if it's from the West. It's a good thing. Because we have problems even within Muslim countries, within our own cultures, that we need to make sure are not part of our day-to-day life. I really do believe that a Muslim can work and be part of Western, I wouldn't say Western culture per se, but Western life. Let's say there are lots of things that we can work around and accommodate without sacrificing our own values as Muslims.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these experiences, even if we're not witnessing them ourselves, it's not to negate them, right? Like, one of the biggest articles that got posted was actually Blizzard and Activision and what was happening there. And I think in particular with the gaming industry, outside of like regular engineering, is that the artistic side of gaming, right? And so a lot of the characters that we grew up with, whether it be Lara Croft from Tomb Raider or a lot of the characters from any game that we've played, right? The hypersexualization of women. And that is a very apparent in these industries. And I think that kind of perpetuates these experiences for a lot of women who are trying to be in these spaces. And I think on to the point of whether it be Western ideals or, Eastern ideals or Muslim values, like there's definitely a lot of things where people are steering to extremes on both sides, right? And there is a balance to all of it. And even a Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, like there is a balance of masculinity identity and also feminine identities, right? Like the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did chores at home. That's not a woman thing to do, right? And that's something that I hear in a lot of circles are like, oh, I'm not, I don't know how to do laundry, or I'm not gonna wash. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're not above any of those, tasks. Don't try to associate certain things as masculine and feminine when they're just like things to do, right? Like being an engineer is just something to do. There's nothing inherently masculine or feminine about these types of things, right? So, I mean, even within our faith, like one of the first universities was founded by a woman, right? And it was in a Muslim country and was Muslim. These are things that we need to be reminded of, unfortunately, but it is an important thing. And a point of pride, I feel like, within the Muslim identity. I do want to rewind even more back. I feel like we're working in reverse, but
before you do that, I just remembered something. Obviously, the perspective would be more coming. It would be better if it came from my co-founder, who's a female.
Yeah,
but she did mention that she faced a lot of sexism within France. So the French attitude is different to the attitude here in the UK. So every country is going to be different. So even within Europe, you have different attitudes.
Wow.
So she found it very difficult to be taken. What's the word?
Seriously?
Taken seriously.
Yeah.
So there are times where, so for example, we go to hackathons, and actually our team is 50% female. So we also have another developer. Her name's Melissa. And she's from the south of Serbia. There's a place called Sanjak. So Sanjak is predominantly Muslim. So their ethnicity is Bosniak, but they have Serbian passports. They're basically born and raised for generations. But it comes in within Serbia itself. And obviously, that, Bosnia and Serbia, they had this massive war. There's a lot of prejudice against Muslims in general. Alhamdulillah, a lot of that's kind of alleviated, but there's still almost like a north-south divide where the people who live in the south are almost forgotten, whereas those people who are like in the north or in places like Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, have a lot more chances. So Melissa she's Muslim. She did a master's in computer science, and one of our friends mentioned her. She said that she's a brilliant mathematician, and she's also a brilliant computer scientist, but she's going to end up working in a bank somewhere, or she's going to have a job that has nothing to do with coding. So we took her on board. So that's like, as a Muslim founder and as a male, you have these chances to give other people chances to come in and work with you and get skilled up. So Erica was like, accommodating. She said, yeah, she can join our team and we'd help her out. So there's massive opportunities for us as Muslims to do something to help, fix that balance. But yeah, there's lots of issues that can definitely still be addressed by us. Yeah.
I actually had a question that's kind of reminding me back, right? So you had your negative experience with your interview, right, with Kraken back in the day that you were mentioning. France currently has, at least from the Western, media that I'm getting, right, a reputation of being a little bit Islamophobic, right? Whether it be the hijab ban and all these other things. And of course, being male, being Muslim, there might be a stereotype that's painted on you of being, hyper conservative, right? So, with your co-founder, was that, I'm making the assumption that she's not Muslim, but was that ever a thing that was discussed about or anything like that? Because she's already coming from a space where she isn't taken seriously within France, right? And now she's about to become co-founders with this, Muslim man who actually identifies with this faith and is practicing. Was that a conversation ever, or what was?
It has to be. I think when you find a co-founder, it's you just need to be on the same wavelength with everything. You can't be a different person. So she, she's accepting of myself and I'm accepting of her. But she's also like a little bit of an outlier in general. Like whether she's in France or wherever she is, she already had spent 10 years in Japan.
Whoa.
And she speaks fluent Japanese.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
she
awesome.
mentioned, and she mentioned she mentioned hanging out with the Bangladeshi people there, eating different types of food.
Are you Bengali?
I'm not. I'm
Okay.
from Kashmir originally.
Okay.
Was born and raised here in the UK. And she was born and raised in France, in Paris, and then she moved to Marseille. So she's had she's traveled, but I think her personality and who she is as an individual, we can't, even myself, you can't, class people based on where they're from. But alhamdulillah, we've been to conferences and places like Turkey. We've been to the UAE. We've been to Singapore, where they have like mosques and different types of culture. So we've actually kind of experienced a lot of things. And we went to a conference, and it was a Solana-based conference, and a lot of the guys, Solana is Rust-based, right?
Yeah.
And she learnt Rust within like 10 days or a week.
Wow.
And I was telling these guys she they were talking about how difficult Rust is, and I was like, do you see that lady there? She's my co-founder. She learned it in 10 days, and the guys are like, no, this is bullshit. And then they walked up to her, she's eating, and they're like, Ameer, your co-founder, said you learnt Rust in 10 days, haha.
Yeah.
And she's like, she didn't even look up, she's like eating, and she's like, yeah. And then she gave out like 10 points as to why Rust sucks compared to other.
She's
other
like the
languages.
John Wick of
a
engineering.
badass.
So she, in a way, like I mentioned, she's like 100x dev,
Yeah.
but without the autism. She's like a really, she has a personality. She cracks jokes.
That's
she's cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good segue into like the investments. That are you at liberty to kind of discuss the details around
Sure,
that?
I'm happy to. So we raised $325,000.
That's a lot of money.
That's it sounds like a
Mashallah.
lot, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, for a startup, I mean,
Allah Mubarak. I mean, I'll give you more.
Yeah,
But yeah.
alhamdulillah. But like, put it in context, right? Like, you're building an infrastructure layer product,
Right.
I mean, just hiring, one or two
If
devs.
this is like an AI rapper
Yeah,
startup,
exactly.
Yeah.
that'd be a lot of money.
I mean,
that's all you need.
this is like
Exactly.
a portion of a salary for
Yeah.
someone like at Anthropic.
And if you
right
notice,
now. Yeah.
And if you notice from our conversation, I hardly mentioned AI.
Yeah.
I mean, AI is a massive part of what we're doing.
Right.
But it's not like we believe that the technology we're building is already revolutionary enough, even without the AI bit.
Yeah.
But the AI definitely enhances things, and I'd say we could position ourselves as an AI startup even, because we're actually building LLMs into our infrastructure, into our base basically, where you can generate 3D models. But going back to the question, we raised 325K. That was like over a year of fundraising in the bear market. So about 2 years back, when funds were like withholding money, they weren't really throwing money at projects. It was very difficult. But alhamdulillah, I managed to go up on stage at a hackathon, did the pitch, and just had various people reach out. So a lot of like conversations, a lot of going through the technology. And I think it's all about, and this is learning process as well. Like fundraising is something you have to get the knack of. You need to get a skill for. In English, we say knack of, or the knack is basically getting used to something, getting a skill. Some people are really good at it. They're great at orating their business, their concept, getting people excited, getting investors like to throw money at them, even when their project is complete BS. Like it's all very emotional. That's something I learned as well. And then like putting it into like a time frame, like okay, I need to be raising this amount of money, and closing it by a certain date, and giving that date as a firm close. So this is something that I didn't know when I started off. Like for me, I was like, okay, oh, there's an investor, I'm going to get that introduction, or I'm going to meet them, I'll go to a conference. I try to present myself to the guy or girl, and I'm like, hey, you know, I see on their name tag it says they work for a VC, and there's like 5 other people hovering around, and I'm like, okay, I need to pitch this quickly.
I feel like you're describing a matrimony event at the same time
It's
now.
it's
Are
like
you at
that.
IGNA right now, or are you at
Yeah.
a VC event?
I guess it's like that.
Yeah.
So you just, you know, trying to impress the VC
Yeah.
quickly, and obviously that doesn't really work. Cold emails also. Alhamdulillah, I didn't really do many cold emails. So when you're starting off fundraising, so I'm just trying to give some advice to whoever else is out there with an idea, who's working on their prototype. There are lots of good resources out there. So obviously you can try and get into an incubator like Y Combinator, which is the most famous, YC. There are others out there, but there's lots of resources on YouTube. So for me, I found the YC YouTube channel to be really useful, and also talking to other entrepreneurs, which I was doing, like people who've already fundraised. For us within the Muslim community, that's going to be very helpful. And even obviously non-Muslims, you know, there's so many people out there who are willing to share and give you, you know, the insights how they got started. Because we always see the positive or the good stories of how people manage to raise millions, but in real life, you know, very, very few people actually get to raise money. And alhamdulillah, we managed to raise a little bit of money. We definitely do need to raise more, so we'll be getting to that. But for now, we do have runway. We still I've been managing that. Sorry, my idea is like being spread all over.
No, you're good.
But let's go back. So I was doing a lot of pitching, and I was honing my skills as well. Like the pitch deck is something that's a living document. So you're gonna get feedback from investors, from entrepreneurs, from other people you share it with. I'd also say don't be secretive to what you're doing, because it's all about execution. So you might have like a great idea, but that doesn't mean other people won't have that idea. And even if they do, the way that they tackle it is going to be very different. The technologies they use, the types of customers they might go after, the way that they do the whole design is going to be different. So I think, you know, first, because when I speak with some people who are starting out and who haven't done this before, they're like, I can't tell you, you know, I'm in stealth mode, or they're reluctant, you know, because they're perfectionists to go out there. But I think just get out there as soon as possible. And this is also things that I've learned and wish I did myself. Just get out there, start talking to as many people as possible, whether they're especially customers, potential customers, and get their feedback. And then once you have like your prototype or you have something to show, then start lining up your investors. Make it so it's like a warm introduction. You don't have to go into full out, give me your money investor mode, but make those relationships, and then have like a database or have like a spreadsheet where you're adding that information and talk about which industry or which vertical they're in, potentially who they can also introduce you to. So you line up all of these people, almost like ammunition that you maybe I shouldn't be talking about weapons on a Muslim podcast.
You're talking to 2 Texans right now. So.
Okay, so so you bring all of this together as like your ammunition, which you need to be shooting out at some. Yeah, somebody's got to, some Islamophobe's got to be watching this. Like, yeah, you Muslim. But you basically what you do is you're collecting all of this information, so that you can put it all together in one momentum, and then you can drive that. You know, because it's all about momentum. It's all about creating a little bit of FOMO as well, because otherwise it's staggered. You speak to one VC 1 week, and then you're trying to find out who's the next lead. And then that VC might have, you know, given you, it might have even been quite warm, but they're like, who else is investing? So you need to be also, you know, being able to answer that sort of question. I don't think there's like a perfect way of doing it. There's lots of different ways of fundraising.
It's also a chicken and egg game a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like creating the FOMO a little bit is a very tactical and strategic way to do it. You have to.
This is literally dating.
I mean,
I think the dating concept's really good.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
you don't want to be like.
You don't want to be too easy, but you know,
But
a little push and pull,
let's
right?
make it even more halal.
Yeah.
Let's say it's an arranged Muslim marriage, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be walking up into, you know, the parents' home, you know, seeing the dad or the family,
Right.
and you're wearing like your tracksuits that you wore when you were, or let's say your pajamas, right?
Yeah.
Or let's say you're such a sloth that you just walk in wearing, you're not really presentable, you didn't do a shower, Maybe you went on a workout and then
Yeah.
you're going, you need to be presentable. Same with a startup. You need to get as many of your eggs in a row.
Yeah.
So like you said, chicken and egg situation.
Yeah.
So, you need to not just have a fancy deck, but try and get traction, try and get, customer feedback. So let's say even if you can't get your product out there very early, get, feedback from your customers and have it lined up, showing what your value prop is, how you're different, why you need to exist. So as much as you can, you need to be, because the VC is looking at you and they're trying to do their due diligence. They're not going to throw money at you for any reason. So you need to be de-risking as much as possible, and doing that as you progress. So don't waste your time trying to be perfect, but at the same time try to walk towards that level of somewhat perfection, inshallah.
Like try to do your best at any
exactly.
given time.
Just keep improving. Like it's like keep going to the gym.
Yeah.
Keep trying to reduce your fat,
Right.
build your muscle. Read the blogs that you need to look at your nutrition.
Has there been a time where where you felt like you fumbled?
I think every day.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
I think alhamdulillah, the Muslim aspect helps a lot with
Yeah.
that. Like my mom, she's a really great person. Like she inspired me a lot as a child as well. Like here in the UK, you have something called the 11 plus. So if you want to get into a good school, this type of school called grammar school, where you need to study and you need to do these exams, and if you pass them, you can get into a really good school with better teaching than normal, like comprehensive or government schools, and they're free as well.
Oh.
Some of them are fee paying, but some of them are free. But you have to be like to that level to get through. Alhamdulillah, I did get through. But my mum, she alleviated all the pressure. She's like, you know what? At first, she was pressurizing. My parents were. But then she was like, if you don't get in, it's fine. What's more important is the akhirah. And, Allah has already written down everything for you. Who you're going to get married to, what your position is going to be in this dunya, with regards to wealth. There's nothing you can do. Obviously, you can do your best, but just put your trust in Allah. And whenever I've had any situation or issue, I try my best myself, but then she's a person that I can speak to and get that feedback from, alhamdulillah. And she's always grounded within Islam. So it's like, in the Quran, Allah tells us this, in the Hadith. So I'm always looking at, the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his Sahaba, his family. And, seeing all of these stories and how much they went through, it's so inspiring, whether that's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, whether it's the companion like Bilal radiallahu anhu, whether it's, stories from, from the Muslims, whether, somebody like Sultan Fateh, the one who took over Constantinople and made, Istanbul, or how the Muslims conquered Spain. Islamophobes are going to love this.
Yeah.
But it's all about, overcoming these really kind of big obstacles, and just when something seems impossible, you never know when that moment is going to come and it's going to be a possibility.
Right.
So I think the Muslims tried to conquer Constantinople for like 800 years or something. Even some of the Sahaba. So there's a famous place in Istanbul called Ayub, and the story is like Ayub al-Ansari, radiallahu anhu, wanted to go and be one of the early Muslims who, because the Prophet ﷺ said the first Muslim or the person who conquers that is going to be such an esteemed person, esteemed Muslim, loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ayub radiallahu anhu, he wanted to be that person.
There's actually a masjid where he's buried, and Ayub Ansari, may Allah be pleased with him, who's actually the one provided housing to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when the first masjid was being built there outside of the Kaaba, of course. There's I remember doing like one of my Sierra courses that he didn't like the fact that he wanted to make sure the Prophet, because he's going in and out of business all the time, people would always be coming into his home, and the Prophet's like, I'll stay downstairs so you guys can go upstairs. But he didn't like that. He didn't like the idea that he was above the Prophet. So he would actually position his feet in a way that would actually never be above the Prophet's feet even. But yeah, incredible individual.
So the time that he did eventually go to the war zone, I think he was in his 80s. He was like quite elderly, and he died at the walls.
Yes.
And that was where he was also buried, because he didn't want to be buried anywhere else. SubhanAllah. So these kind of stories, because it does feel like there's so many obstacles that come your way. There's so many no's that you get, whether that's investing, whether you want to work with somebody, or even when you want to reach out to someone, you're going to find it, you're going to be ghosted so much.
Yeah.
So there's always this kind of dating or marriage concept here. But yeah, ghosting is also a big thing. But you just have to have a very hard skin and keep going, keep talking to these people that you think might be useful or beneficial. And also don't let it change who you are. Like I found, I want to be that person that is going to be helpful. Because I think the Prophet ﷺ said that the best Muslim is the one who is the most helpful, or the most strong person is the one who is most helpful for others. So that's, inshallah, what I want to instill in myself. Like, even if I'm super successful and super wealthy, I don't want to be that type of person who shuts off and doesn't try to help others. I think even if if I become somebody who can invest, and I have been in that position, I've been working as a partner within a fund which was a non-Muslim one, but within the Web3 space. And then I knew that the fellow partners were not going to agree to invest, but I did my best to help others, especially from our own community, say, hey, there's these kind of things that are missing. Try to, sort it out, or connecting with people who can help them out. Other people, they just go and I wouldn't say it's laziness. They just don't find it's beneficial for them. So they'll just ignore that person or even ghost them. It's quite a thing to ghost people. But going back to this, you just have to have a hard skin. You have to keep going. I think people talk about motivation, but sometimes it's not about motivation. You just have to have that perseverance and ability to push yourself. Other people that I'm really inspired by are in sports. So Muhammad Ali, what's his name? The MMA guy as
Khabib.
well. Khabib.
Islam.
Yeah, Islam. So these guys and even top tier tennis players.
Yeah.
Even when they're the best at what they do, they just keep training. People like Ronaldo, they wake up early, they train, they're very, very committed to what they're doing. They're just driven, and you have to put that into yourself as well. You just have to wake up. And I think as Muslims, inshallah, we're doing our 5 times salah. I think that gives you that kind of rigidity or that sort of structure within your day.
Discipline.
That discipline. And then you feel that discipline together with your iman. And I think you can't be purely profit driven. So if you're only thinking, I'm going to be super rich, you're not going to make it. Obviously we all want to be comfortable and not have to be worried about our finances. But I think the big driver for me, and I'd say even for Erica, and she's not even Muslim, is what we can give back to society and help others, whether that's being in a position where I can hire people from my own community, whether that's eventually being in a position where I can have my own VC fund or ability to invest in projects that strengthen us as Muslims. So I think that's a massive driving force as well. And then you should accept that you're human, and everyone has problems.
Yeah.
There's not one person who doesn't have something within their life, whether that's they have a conflict with their spouse, or they're getting divorced, or they want to find a marriage partner, whether they're starting a business, whether their parents don't agree with them on certain things, whether they have a health condition, whether they there's so many things that are inflicted on a person, that we shouldn't look around, especially on social media, and think everything's perfect, and we shouldn't compare ourselves. Basically, we should accept that we're human. we're going to have down days, and then we can build ourselves up, and inshallah we'll get through it. Giving up is never something that comes to my mind. It's like you're just going to regret it. Do your best and put your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I read a lot, alhamdulillah, of the Quran, and there's so many ayat in the Quran which are just about perseverance and having sabr and putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there's so many ahadith out there. It's like you get those. I'm not too much into self-help books, alhamdulillah, but if that works for some people, that's great. And I'm also not the type of person who will just say, raise your iman, bro.
I mean, the Quran is a self-help.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like you're reading the ultimate self-help.
Yeah,
book.
exactly. It's the best self-help.
I think it's so important to
reminder
get help.
For Surah Kaf today. It is a Friday.
So I'm also not the type of person who would say, hey, just throw yourself into Islamic lectures and the Quran. Sometimes you do speak to like a therapist. Try and find out what's kind of pulling you down. So I'm very open to those sort of things. But alhamdulillah, I just found that I have that foundation around me with family. So I'll tell my mom, hey, I have this problem in my startup. She might not understand everything, but she'll be saying like, don't worry about it. Just keep going. Keep
the
it.
framework, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very delicate balance. And I think this is like our, I would say, super advantage as a Muslim, right? It's like we should ideally have unconventional faith that whatever's happening, whether it's a rejection from a customer or you lose a customer, or you can't raise the funds that you need, or investor or girl
or your business fails.
Or your business fails, right? You have like unconventional faith that is what is best for you. As cliche sometimes that sounds, like I feel like there's no other way to think about it. And you talked about something that I really prescribe to, is like the difference between motivation and discipline.
Yeah.
And motivation is like this thing where like you can have cycles of you're very motivated and you're doing a lot of stuff, and then the moment that motivation is gone, if you're not doing a lot of stuff, you're not going to be very successful in the long term. So you need to have some equilibrium of like, hey, for sure, like there'll be periods of maybe motivation will help accelerate, but you need to just be consistent. And isn't that what's like showed in our faith?
Exactly.
Like, doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like appreciate someone who is like just reading a little, like one ayah of the Quran versus like reading the entire Quran every single, So it's like, just if you're starting out and you're trying to build these habits, there's not much of a difference.
And this is, we talked about salah and motivation, and I was at a halakha with Abdul Rahman Murphy at Kalam, and one of the things that they talked about, or one of the things that he was sharing reflection on, was that sometimes we feel like, when we do salah, like has to be this amazing meditative state. And sometimes you just got to do it, and honestly, he was saying like, from what he was sharing was like, it's almost more meaningful when you're doing the latter, because you're doing it purely for the sincereness for Allah. That is it. Because you don't want to do it. You don't have enough time. You're emotionally not feeling it, but you're still obligated. You're still responsible and will be held accountable for your salah, right? And it's like, you still have to show up. You still have to check in with Allah. And I would say when I'm in those moments, right, and I still check in, I'm like, man, I feel better.
It's also part of the teachings of Islam.
Yeah.
So it's both in the Quran and even in the Hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-imanu yazidu wa yankus." It can increase and it can decrease. And I think one of the Sahaba also went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, when we're with you, we're thinking about the akhirah, we think about, the day of judgment, we think about these things. But when we're at family, we're with our family, we're playing with our kids, we forget about it. And the Prophet ﷺ said, there's a time for this and a time for that. Yeah. And so we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. Obviously, it's fard, it's an obligation, so we have to, do it. But, when you do it, it also helps with regards to motivation. Right. And then even in history, you have things like, we had the Battle of Badr, and the Muslims, they were little in number, but they were highly motivated, and they were managing, to follow on and to defeat their enemies. Then when it came to Uhud, when, there was a little bit of, because the Prophet ﷺ gave clear instructions to the archers to stick to where they were. They just had to have that perseverance. But when they saw things, going the other direction,
when Khalid bin Walid's troops were returning, and then
so their motivation kind of went.
Yeah.
And then they left their positions.
Well, that's actually a really good point, right? Because the losing of the archer's position was because they were seeing victory, right? But they were not commanded to leave yet. And so I feel like in so many cases, like, don't celebrate too early,
It's true,
right?
yeah.
Stay humble, stay prepared. But I think that's kind of the beautiful thing with our faith. There's so many transferable, knowledge that can go into the things that we're building or doing. In many, many ways. And I mean, your mom kind of proves the point here. Like you were saying, like, she may not understand the technicalities or the challenge, but the derivative of what you're going through is a challenge of the dunya, right? And that your mom can understand, and that she can give advice on, right? So I think that's wonderful how
My
you kind
dad
of tie
was the
that
same.
together.
So he died, rahimahullah, 2 years ago.
But
But before that, he was a businessman. He tried a lot of things. So I've seen him do things and fail.
yeah,
So that also was part of it. Like, failing isn't a thing.
Yeah.
Like, so I think in the UK compared to the US, there's a little bit of a different mindset.
around
So-
success or failing.
Yeah,
Could
so-
you expand on that?
So, for example, here in the UK, once people are really afraid of failing and not doing well in certain things, so there's a lot of kind of pressure on people to almost have this kind of perfect trajectory, and not take risks, massive risks. Whereas in the US, especially in places like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, there's a mindset where it's fine. You could try something, doesn't work out, do something else. It's not a reflection on who you are as a person. Whereas here, a lot of people, they do reflect on it. They're like, oh, I just wasn't good enough. It's just, just sometimes it's just a matter of, there's so many various factors.
Right.
There's a time, it's a time thing, or, maybe you're too early to a market, maybe you're too late, whatever it is. There's so many different variations. It's not really about you. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. You just can't be hard on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's like building it's like building the mechanical chops of how to just be better over time. Like, failure is just like, it's part of the journey.
Yeah.
I just see failure as like, I mean, there's like, you mentioned this, like in the US, like, you celebrate failure sometimes, and we do that on purpose because, like, you have to remember that that's like a stepping stone to get to success.
Exactly,
And all
yeah.
it takes is one. All it takes is one.
And you
Like,
keep learning from that.
yeah, and like even if you go through like you kind of have to fail your way to success. So you just keep learning, pivot.
Yeah.
And that mindset is very important. Like, I don't know how you have a startup if you don't prescribe
It's
to
a
that
series
startup,
of
because
iterations.
because you're infinite set of problems,
Right.
and you're dealing with so many issues all the time. You have to just have the grit, the intensity to kind of focus on those things. But yeah, like, what's your thoughts about, like, do you think the UK is changing? I mean, it sounds like you actually went to the US, like, you have a little bit of perspective from there. So, like, what's your thoughts about, like, do you think the UK is, like, evolving? Do you think it's, because I mean, I'm pretty impressed by, like, a lot of people that I met yesterday, some very successful people, mashallah. So, like, like, what's your kind of overall ethos? Like, you think you still have a lot of work to do?
I think year by year it's definitely improving. So, for example, with Muslim Tech Fest, MTF, we've got Dean developers. So even outside of, like, the Muslim perspective, I believe that it's improving for founders. It's improving for tech in general. It's probably not at the same level as Silicon Valley, but that's a massive.
Well, I mean,
step.
even there's not a lot of cities in the States that are at Silicon
And I
Valley.
think the world is also becoming much smaller, like with the web, with the way people communicate, with the way people work. There's lots of things that happen remotely, and people move and exchange ideas, exchange business from here and also from the US. So I think it's definitely a lot better than it used to be. In the past, so when I first went to Silicon Valley, that's like over 10 years ago. I had, like, my first startup idea, which was like a question and answer platform. Because I was fed up with, like, you have Quora, you had Google, people, how do they find answers? I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's just like trying to solve the issue with fake news and sensitive answers or sensitive questions. Like, you see something happening in places like Iraq, and if you're like, you don't have the ability to speak to your family about it, or to do with relationships. So you mentioned dating earlier, and you need to find out about that. Is Googling that the best way to find out? And is speaking to your local imam the best way to do that. So it's like having a safe space and having the ability for people to be able to express any view, and doing it in a way which you didn't have trolls, didn't have fake, news. So that was the challenge that we were trying to solve. But at that time, I never did a startup before, I think. I might have done like a few other projects before, but I was very new to it, and I knew here in the UK, it was quite dead. Therefore, I went there and I was like, my eyes were open, like everyone, there's like a whole buzz and whole vibe, and so many people doing so cool stuff. But I think that is kind of happening here as well, especially here in London. It's like, it's becoming much more of a place where people are trying new things, trying to create their own startups. That ecosystem has started to build up, and I'm really proud and happy to see that happening within the Muslim community too. So back in the day, there was absolutely almost nothing for Muslims. Even in the Bay Area, I'd go into the masjid, and I'd try and find other founders and try and connect with them. And then I think what we have, or we're in a position now, especially with MTF, and even with people like yourself, you guys, you have that. When you did your introduction, you have that mindset now that you want to establish like a platform where you can pull people up, and you have the ability to give them, that information, give them that cohesion to not just get started, to get to success, and have a place for them to grow from. And we didn't have that in the past. And I think that's that's something that we're seeing happening here. So we have Dean developers, you have MTF, you have all these little organizations, grassroots, that are coming from other founders, people who've done that, who've had that experience, and are able to give it back. So alhamdulillah, it's growing. It's a good place to be. I think out of all of Europe, probably London is the place to be for a startup founder. And then
why is that? You think that's where the biggest amount of capital and innovation talent is located?
Yeah, I think that's pretty it.
Okay,
Pretty much it. And the mindset as well. It's it's a big city.
Yeah.
You have 10 million people already. So you're going to have a lot of different talent. You have some very good universities here. You have UCL or Imperial, obviously Oxford and Cambridge. But even outside of that, because I don't want to be that type of person who's also elitist, because I'm not from those universities. But I do find that there is elitism sometimes where people will judge a person whether they've completed their university degree, whether they went to a certain specific university. And I do believe that and I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I do believe that we need to be a bit more open to looking at people who don't really fit into certain standards. Because that's going to be happening to us as Muslims as well. If you have a beard, if you look real Muslim and you behave like somebody who's with a Muslim name and practices, you don't want to be. And you might have the most amazing idea, you might have the most the best concept, but you don't want to be the one who's pigeonholed. And I think as Muslims, we also should be establishing those criteria within ourselves, and not taking these Western ideas or these kind of traditional ideas. Get away from that. So I think things are definitely progressing here, for startup founders, and for Muslims especially.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like you talked about a lot of things, but I think one thing that's been unique about the U.S. Has been that from what I know, like we have a lot of very successful Muslim founders and entrepreneurs, and even if you go a step further and say like people that work for startups, like we've helped build a lot of these companies, like as a ummah, right? Like that, unfortunately, are complicit in the genocide right now, and I think that was kind of an awakening of the entire ummah. And I think that we're looking around the room and we're asking the same question you did 10 years ago, which is, hey, I'm in the Bay Area and I can't find, it's not as easily accessible of where the Muslim founder is. I'm going to the masjid, where else should I go? So I'm really happy to see like that we've recognized this problem, at least in the last couple of years as a collective. And we're trying to like there's awesome things that are coming out from the US as well. And I think like MTF is also around the same timeline, right? So I think there's a global movement that, especially in the Western world, like we're like, hey, how do we like get some of that leverage and infrastructure that we've helped build back, right? And how can we be in a position where we can continue to contribute to society positively, but also not compromise like what are our core ideals. And something that was interesting that I don't know if you were there for the tour yesterday at Palestine House, but I was so impressed. Like, oh my gosh. One thing that I learned, and I will probably butcher the statistics because I have not had much time between last night and this morning to look into this, but basically I think he was saying like between four countries, I think he said Turkey, Iran, Indonesia / Malaysia, and I can't remember the fourth one. But anyways, he said between four Muslim countries, like 70 or 80% of the trade routes are like there's impact or correlation.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, there's control of supply.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, can we just say that? Can you just treat us like humans?
Well, I mean, the entire.
I was like, that's leverage. But if you could just communicate and be visible to what's going on, like that's important. And I think that's a challenge still. That's why, like, honestly, that's one of the main reasons why we're like. We want these types of podcasts. We want more people to do these types of things.
It's amazing, mashallah.
Right? And inshallah, it's successful.
For doing this,
I mean, inshallah, it's successful. Inshallah, our intentions stay pure, and like it has to be that way, right?
I think it's already successful. It's like defining success, but that's a different thing.
Yeah. Inshallah. But it's like you have visibility, then connectivity, right? Then like actually working towards a common goal. So I think like. It's awesome to like see some Muslim brothers that we just like and sisters that we can just like vibe with and just feel like, hey, these guys are just like us, even though they might not have cowboy hats or something. but it's cool to like relate and then work towards this like uplifting mission. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I don't know if you have anything else, Naveed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just building off that, right? I mean, the entire spice trade was dominated by us, and I was in Indonesia for about a month in October of last year. And I was doing like martial arts training there, which was fun. But during that time,
was that Silat?
Yeah, it was actually, Pencak Silat. So I have a trainer now, alhamdulillah, in Dallas as well, who's a Filipino brother who's Muslim as well, and it's been fun just training. But yeah. Have you ever watched The Raid?
I used to do IBF Kali.
Oh my gosh, let's go.
I did some Silat too.
Yeah.
That's another story. I had to quit. So I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I accidentally stabbed my.
Instructor?
No, the person I was sparring with.
Okay.
In the eye.
Oh no.
With a blunt knife.
Oh my goodness.
And then afterwards, my mom's like, "You're not going back."
Wow.
But yeah, oh my goodness. During my time there, I learned a lot more about like Indonesian history and the spice trade and all these other elements, and even with of like how Islam kind of got introduced to like our region, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, was through a lot of like Yemeni trade routes, right? And so it's just kind of incredible how these things are tied into our faith. I mean, even with the amount of donations that Abu Bakr gave for the Ummah early on, and I'll be pleased with him. Like, these are critical things, right? Like, things that building businesses, yes, is challenging, but to your point, when you get to the point that if Allah blesses you with wealth, what are you going to do with it, right? And that's going to be the test in some way or some format. But yeah, how are we doing on time?
So I don't want to.
Yes.
Don't go off on another tangent.
No tangents here, man.
It's okay, that's fine.
Yeah, there's no such thing with us. Yeah.
So Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
So Bruce Lee's instructor for weapons, for example, sticks, the nunchaku. The guy's name was Dan Inosanto.
Okay.
So Dan Inosanto was from the Philippines.
Yeah.
And he was an expert on Kali, which is similar to Silat.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book, and I read the book. So when I was really into these Filipino martial arts, I read it, and he mentioned the Muslims in there.
Yes.
And he talks about the Moros, or the Moro Moros. So from the southern Philippines, they have their own Kali.
Yep.
And he mentioned how they started off with the sticks and the swords.
Right.
And obviously they had to fight the Inquistadors or the Spanish who invaded, and they'd just go with their swords and they just finish them off. And actually, the Americans also, unfortunately, they came in. They had to invent a new caliber weapon because they couldn't defeat the Filipino martial artists. And one of their big folklore heroes is Lapu Lapu.
Yeah.
And he was like he's like, if you ask any Filipino, they'll talk about Lapu Lapu like to the end of
Right.
days. Like,
I mean,
he was like a warrior champion.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing because I mean, this
And
kind
they,
of.
and they preferred the sticks
Uh-huh.
because you could break the bones.
Yes.
And it's like a lot faster. So they're like, no, we're not going to use the swords. We're going to just use sticks. We're
Right.
happy with it. And they're everywhere because they use a rattan. And
Yeah,
it's in the
yeah.
jungles. So it's like ready-made weapons everywhere you go.
It's kind of incredible because I mean, brother Yakub, who's my trainer, he was the one who educated me on this, and this kind of goes into like the idea of Orientalism expands beyond just the Middle East. I mean, it's really just Western perspective because there were such incredible combatants that they were like, oh, these people are like animals. You can't shoot them down, and that's why the invention of the new bullet came in. And it's actually this region was also Muslim fighters, and they were introduced to Islam was through trade in this area in the Philippines. And so one of the things that my trainer taught me, he was when it comes to like self-defense and things like that, it's like, hey, like this is also part of our deen because. When you're fighting, you're not ever going on the offensive. You're fighting on the defensive. And if you're fighting to protect your family, what are you doing? You're preserving life. And that's probably one of the most important elements of Islam is the preservation of life. And so I think that was something incredible because you hear about the tragedies that happened by the conquistadors or the colonizers that came into the Philippines. But yeah, I mean, the combat style of fighting, of using sticks and things like that was like, I was kind of blown away. I'm like, this sounds like a movie.
Did you guys start off as well with weapons and then you transition to open hand?
Yeah, so for us, when I started in Indonesia with my trainer, with my guru, we did hands. And so the way I kind of like that a lot because the way he transitions, like the nice thing with the structure was that what we're learning here will transfer over to using sticks or staff or even a crambit, which is the knife or the dagger, right? And they did. I mean, there's like slight variations, but the overall movement was very much the same. And, when I went into it, my thought was like, in Texas, obviously we can carry, but I never want to get to the position where like I have to use a gun. Like that's the last resort. And so it's like, I want to be really, really
I've got
good.
a really dumb question.
No, what's up?
Can you guys carry swords?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can, but I don't think I've seen anyone.
Yeah,
do
you
that.
don't take a knife to a gunfight.
Gunfight, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, I know people that have taken machetes like to national forests and when they camp there, that's kind of helpful to
It
walk.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Like walkthroughs.
But yeah, so my thought was like I want to be really good at self-defense with my hands before I even get to the idea of a gun, and so that was kind of the intention for that, and that's why I still kind of continue to practice as much as I can. But it is important, right? Like, I mean, unfortunately, we had a sister who was killed in a knife stabbing in DFW, and this is right after after October. And then similarly, a story happened in Houston as well, and that's kind of became more and more apparent.
There's a boy who was stabbed multiple times
in Chicago
by the neighbor.
Yeah, it was a 7-year-old boy. Yeah, and his neighbor was actually their landlord who did that, who've known them for years, and so
Palestinian.
And so I think it's one of those things that's become more of a greater priority for me is like being able to protect my family, my close friends, and things like that if situations ever happen.
Going back to that warrior mentality. So the guy I learnt off, he was a Muslim, but he studied. He studied something called rapid assault tactics.
Okay.
And that was done by a guy called Paul Vunak.
Yeah.
And he was an instructor for the Navy SEALs. So basically they were picking the best of the best things.
Yeah.
And even the mindset. So they picked that from the Philippines, from the Muslims, and they put it into their thing. So they were like creating all of this to make the best soldier in combat.
Yeah.
So subhanAllah, even like the Muslims influenced these sort of things.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we should, at the very least, be able to defend ourselves and know these sort of things.
Right. I mean, a lot of military tactics as well from Khalid bin Walid and all these other strategies too are still applied in many ways. But yeah, it's incredible of how much innovation in all aspects.
I think it's part of decolonizing.
Oh, absolutely.
Our the best in combat.
Yeah.
The military minds such as Khalid bin Walid and others. There were so many scientists.
I mean, Al-Khawarizmi, right, with algebra, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And even what's his name? There was a great inventor who invented the first medical instruments. I think his name was what's his name? it would come to me. But
Yeah, yeah.
basically, he not only invented those instruments, he also did the first successful cesarean section.
Wow.
Now, I feel shame now that it's on the tip of my tongue, but
Yeah.
I'm ashamed now that it's not coming to my mind
Yeah,
as
yeah.
easily as Darwin.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Or
so
Einstein.
Because
yeah.
we're raised in schools and we're given these names. But imagine how many Muslim scientists and mathematicians and all sorts of amazing people there were that invented things. If they were white and European,
You would remember
you would
them.
know about it.
Yeah.
So even the person, now we take it for granted that we have these 3-course meals and
Yeah.
we have all of these kind of knives and forks and presentation and different types of plates. That was actually done in Muslim Andalusia.
Really?
So all of that sort of stuff, that sort of elegance
The
of
structure of
a
it.
dinner set
Yeah.
and the presentation of the food and how it's done in order, that was done by the Muslims in Andalusia. Because
Yeah.
Muslims were there in Spain for 800 years.
Right.
When everyone here was in the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
Because here you're in London right now.
Right.
When you walk down the streets, imagine you're walking down and people are throwing their poop out
Right on the
windows,
sides.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
how they were doing it.
Yeah.
Imagine the smell. Even that word, imagine the smell, on social media, when people are doing these racist stereotypes about Indians,
Mhm.
they write this thing, imagine the smell. So we're trying to decolonize by promoting our values and our history and our strengths as Muslims and the things that have been neglected or hidden deliberately by the people who have been colonizing our people and who are killing our people even today.
You're right.
So I think we all have this kind of, I think just this podcast itself is alhamdulillah decolonizing.
Yeah.
There's so many things that each of us have the power to do. And when we see things like Gaza, people say, oh, what can we do? We can't go there. We can't, take part. We can't, try and fight back. They feel helpless. But actually there's so much that every individual has something that they can put out there and do to push back. And it might not happen immediately, but over the long term, we'll be in a better position. We're going to be strong again, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So yeah, jazakallah khair.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I mean, I really, really appreciate it. And I know it was last minute, so we appreciate you making
No
some
worries.
time. And it's really been great. We've had, maybe I'll do the outro now, but thank you so much for coming by. So thank you for joining the Caravan Podcast. We're here with Ameer Ali from Libi Engine at Muslim Tech Week. And inshallah, we'll see you around at all the
Come and
events. and the
create on
rest.
Libby.xyz.
Libby.xyz.
There we
Check it
go.
out.
Or
Sounds
follow
like
us on
Ricardo.
socials as well.
What's your socials? We'll
So
tag
it'll
them,
be- it'll
but
be Libi Engine.
Libi Engine? Okay.
Right now we're on Twitter. I think we do have like Insta. We'll also be creating TikTok.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let me go back to your GTM question, but
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you.